So Matt, could you walk us through just 118 and so we get a good idea what this thing does?
Thanks, Matt. Maybe eventually.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Matt Obrecht, LSO. Senate File 118 was a Joint Appropriations Committee bill. You all sponsored at your last meeting together. I think it was February 22nd, in between the 8-day virtual session and the start of the in-person session. Senate File 118, as you sponsored it, did two things. It accepted and appropriated federal rental relief funds and set up the Department of Family Services as the executive branch agency to administer that program. And then the other thing it did with $20 million of leftover CARES Act funds, it allowed the expenditure of those funds for applications that had been approved under some of our 2020 special session laws, the programs that were created by those laws. But due to the timing of the end of that program, those applications were never funded. So it allowed the funding of those approved applications. Mr. Chairman and House Appropriations Committee, as the bill was in the Senate, it created a third category of spending of federal funds, and that's $18 million available for the governor to use at his discretion to restart programs that had expired on December 30th, 2020, but that were previously authorized under your special session legislation, and to take applications for those programs, and that will run through the end of this year pursuant to the current expiration date for those CARES Act funds. That's a broad overview, Mr. Chairman. We can walk through it.
So let's just talk about the 20 million. My understanding that there's about, I don't know, 14 to 18 that they actually fit in this category. Is that accurate, or?
Mr. Chairman, I don't know that number.
And then on the 18 million, do we know how did they come up with the 18 million?
Mr. Chairman, I am not 100% sure either how that number was settled on by the Senate. I think that Senator Perkins had some conversations with the governor's office, some interested entities that were eligible for those programs previously, but weren't able to apply for a variety of reasons. They didn't think they'd get the projects done in time. And given the CARES Act money that it's still available or that may become available, I think that was the 18 million was the number settled on by the governor's office, Drew, and those entities.
And so, go ahead.
So, Mr. Chairman, following up on that, Mr. Obrecht, do you have an example of what one of those programs would be that would fit in the 18 million?
Mr. Chairman, the one I know about, or the two I've heard about anecdotally, are broadband and some agriculture programs, potentially. But it will all be at the governor's discretion to decide which of those programs to restart.
So my recollection, there was about 6 to 8 million in broadband that was out there. But I think the broadband, was that part of the 20 million or the 18 million?
Mr. Chairman, my understanding is that likely to be both. You know, they would potentially have some projects that were approved but weren't funded yet, that weren't going to be able to be completed before December 30th, and some either applications that were never filed and may be filed this year under the recreation of some of those programs.
Further questions? Okay. I don't know that we need to walk through the bill. I mean, that's essentially what it does.
That's what it does.
What it doesn't do, it doesn't address any of the ARP dollars.
No, Mr. Chairman, that's exactly right. Any of the new American Rescue Plan Act funds are not appropriated within this bill.
So my inclination, committee, is to, we have House Bill 263 that addresses the ARP dollars. But because we don't know the lifespan of that bill, we probably ought to incorporate that language into this bill as well, so that we've got 2 vehicles to do the same thing. We had 3 vehicles. We had the language that was in the budget bill, but we took that out, predicated on the fact that we have these 2 bills, this and 263. So, Matt, I think what we'd like to do is take the language in 263 that deals with the ARP and integrate it into this bill. And so if there's not any further issues on, and the other thing we'd like to do is maybe we could have Don or someone come up, or Drew, and walk us in the governor's office, and walk us through the 20 million and the 18, how much it is, what it's for, what we reasonably anticipate. I think there's a desire to get this bill out quickly, because my understanding is the governor is already kind of reformulating and setting up the vehicles to expend these dollars, because there's a limited time frame on the dollars, which I think isn't that correct? The end of 2021 or of this year, basically.
For the CARES Act funds. That's right, Mr. Chairman.
So we want to allow the maximum flexibility to expend the dollars that are, otherwise we lose them. But I think we need a better handle, just an understanding on it, so we can describe it to the floor, and we can walk through it and articulate it and understand it as best we can.
Well, Mr. Chairman, to that end, and I did print copies for the committee, the governor's office at your meeting on the 22nd did provide a handout for a breakdown of that $20 million of funds that were allocated but not yet spent or encumbered. And testing and contact tracing is 7.7 million. State employee safety is 1.9 million. Business relief is almost 4 million. Judicial branch is almost 2. Tourism, 500,000, and K through 12, 326,000. And that's a total of 20,516,000 in those amounts allocated but not yet spent or encumbered.
So that's tranche 1, basically?
Right, that's right, tranche 1. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So Matt, am I correct that ERAP money expires in September?
No, Mr. Chairman, here's my recollection of those funds, is that if you don't expend a certain amount by September 1, then a portion of it will expire. And again, I've got a handout that the governor's office provided on those funds at your February meeting as well. So whoever takes the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And the 20 million, I think, is the 20 million that was never allocated or anything. It was really kind of the last bit of the CARES money that's never had a finger on it. And that's where that comes, or the 18 million. That's where that comes from. And so I think it was just to take advantage of those 2 different.
And we don't know how much money's in the pot right now.
No.
My understanding.
That's right. Mr. Chairman, they think we've got about $20 million, but we will get more money back either through those FEMA reimbursements or through funds that had been allocated but weren't expended, some clawback dollars as well.
And the problem with FEMA is it could be September, or October before we get any of it. And that gives us basically 2 months to do anything with.
Mhm.
So, Mr. Chairman, related question to that, thank you. So does this give us the vehicle to address those, or would that be something we'd have to come back to in a possible special session?
The answer is we could do both. This is the vehicle if we don't have a special session.
Okay.
And it's also the vehicle we'll get the governor going now. So in all likelihood, if we come back in special session in June or July, which is the current thought, a lot of this could already be reappropriated and assigned, particularly on the first 20 million. Is that your understanding now?
Yep. Mr. Chairman, so as House Bill 263 left the House in gross copy, and the rest of the bills that appropriated CARES Act fund, either you stripped out the actual appropriated amount or the Senate has. And that bill, House Bill 263, says no funds will be appropriated for, no CARES Act funds will be appropriated for any of those other bills until September 1st.
Well, except it gives off authority for the 20 million and the 18 million,
That's right, for the other bills outside of Senate File 118.
which is these dollars. Okay, so if you would, Matt, let's throw that language into this, and then if you have those handouts, I think it'd be useful if we got
You
them.
bet, I'll leave them with Mary Lee.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Follow up, Mr. Chairman. So you're saying that the 18 and the 20 million would be effective. The governor could start using that
Right.
ASAP,
As soon as this bill is enacted.
but anything else would be special session or governor would have access after September 1. In summary.
Right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
That's the intent, and so that's what we want you to put in this, is to add what Tom just said in terms of the ARP dollars. Right? Sorry, I didn't take any public comment. We were just jumping right off. Come on up. We're expediting things here to get things done.
Appreciate that about this committee, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Pete Obermueller with the Petroleum Association of Wyoming. Mr. Chairman, we support the bill, and I think Mr. Oberg didn't include the Energy Rebound program on the list, but I believe it is on the list. I'm not exactly sure. I think actually the Energy Rebound program could be in both of those buckets, given the explanation of what those buckets are for. But real quickly, Mr. Chairman, that the Energy Rebound program was 30 million of CARES Act that was for eligible projects, either completion of wells or workovers or recompletions of wells, or for plug and abandon. And it was the last program that was authorized. It was pretty amazing, frankly, Mr. Chairman. The awards were granted on the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, and companies were out doing work in the field by the Monday after Thanksgiving, because we had 5 weeks by the December 30 deadline to do the projects. And I think that that ERP spending totaled somewhere around 28 million of projects that were started and or completed by that time frame. We had some projects where weather delays stopped some things from happening, and materials were delivered on like January 5th or 7th or something like that, and so then weren't eligible for reimbursement. And so those would fall under this. If I understand that second bucket, then there could in fact be other applications at the governor's discretion if decided to keep Energy Rebound program going. Mr. Chairman, I would say that the differentiating aspect of Energy Rebound program is it was not payments related to just strictly related to financial loss, although that was a part of it. It also attached, like I said, specific projects that companies had to do in order to essentially earn the Energy Rebound program funding. the important part about that is it created a multiplier effect in terms of sales and use tax, severance tax, and ad valorem tax that at the end of the projects will likely outstrip the spending of it on the program anyway. So I'm proud of the governor, of the help from many members of the legislature for getting that going so quickly, and especially of workers, of my members who were able to do these projects in the dead of winter in 5 weeks under that deadline. It's pretty remarkable. So we support the bill, Mr. Chairman.
And we're thankful for the weather.
Right.
Questions for Pete? Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Pete, do you have a list of those projects and the companies and so on? Could you provide that to us?
I certainly do, Mr. Chairman. Just on top line, there were about 260 some projects, about 68 recipients or so. But those were really, quite frankly, those were pass-through entities, the recipients of the ERP. What they did is turned around and paid their local vendors. So there were around 200 local vendors who did these projects based in 14 communities all around the state that actually completed these projects. The recipients of the ERP funding didn't actually keep that money, it just passed through to local
So
businesses.
Pete, what do you anticipate is still in the chain that will be reapproved when this bill goes out?
Mr. Chairman, good question. It's pretty small. There were a couple of plug and abandon projects and a couple of workovers that had some supply chain issues. I honestly think that particular bucket is somewhere in the, oh geez, maybe it's only $100,000 or so. The question is whether or not we want to do more of that kind of work.
Go ahead. No?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Pete, in that aggressive construction timeframe you had last fall, did you have to bring a lot of employees from out of state, or did you find that workforce in state?
Mr. Chairman, yeah, thank you for that question, Representative Simpson. It was by and large Wyoming-based companies and Wyoming people who did the jobs. That is in some ways because the workover projects and the P&A projects are done by local vendors who do those sort of smaller projects. When you get to the really big projects, the drilling of uncompleted wells, those are big crews that are attached to the completion rigs themselves. And so when they, even in normal times, when they shift around from states and basins, the crew goes with the rig. So the bigger projects had people come from other places where those rigs were. But at the end of the day, I'm quite happy to take rigs and people out of Colorado and bring them here.
Further questions for Pete? Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other public comment? Please, come on up.
Morning, Mr. Chairman. Eric Boley, President of the Wyoming Hospital Association.
Good morning.
And we appreciate you bringing this bill forward. We obviously support it. We worked with you in that special interim meeting between the 2-week session and this one. We've been working closely with the governor's office to get a lot of expenses paid that were incurred. And we've had some success early on. I think up until about 2 weeks ago, I was providing both you and Chairman Perkins, as well as President Dockstader and Speaker Barlow, a list of at least the capital construction projects that were still on the table that hadn't been paid for. Some of those have been already taken care of, but as early as this week, we were told that on certain projects, if this bill weren't enacted, they wouldn't be able to fulfill some of those payments. And so we're still in support of this. As we talk about the different tranches of money and the new addition that was made by the Senate, we're more interested right now in just getting folks reimbursed for stuff they've already done and for projects that were started. And because of COVID delays, they didn't get it done by December 30th. However, there were facilities in the state, whether it's nursing homes or hospitals, that could have done some great things with CARES funding, but because of timeline with how long it took to get applications heard and then get started, because of bidding processes and different things, there were projects that were never started. And so I think There may be some interest. I don't think it's going to be a lot, but there are facilities that didn't do any capital construction projects to treat COVID that may be interested in that third pot or second pot, however you want to talk about it. And we think there's probably just a few $1 million still on the table right now for capital construction projects that were started and completed but haven't been paid for. We're also aware in getting information, accurate, timely information has been a little bit difficult for us, but we also think there's several $1 million of payroll that hasn't been paid to hospitals, nursing homes, and other healthcare providers around the state. So we're guessing maybe around $10 million total that hasn't been expended to this point.
And so how much, under the ARP program, there's dollars for that as well, is my understanding. Is that your understanding?
Mr. Chairman, we believe so. We're still trying to wrap our heads around what the new funding looks like and we haven't really seen a lot of guidance yet on how it'll be allowable and used, but we do believe there's going to be additional funding coming through that.
Questions for Eric? All right.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay. Anybody else?
Chairman Nicholas, this is Ryan. I have Emily Soli with the governor's office. Would you like me to admit her in?
Absolutely.
Will do. Thanks.
Welcome, Emily.
Chairman Nicholas, members of the committee, thank you again for considering this bill today. Emily Soli from the governor's office. I'm really just here to convey the governor's support for this bill, specifically for the emergency rental assistance program. As the committee is aware, the state received $200 million from the stimulus package in December. We're up to receive up to $175 million additional dollars under the American Rescue Plan Act for the rental assistance program, which under the new law has been expanded to include up to $50 million for people with mortgages who are facing foreclosure. So certainly it's important to the state, it's important to the governor to get these dollars out to the families that need it as quickly as possible. DFS in line with the multi-agencies that they've been working with, so that's Department of Workforce Services, the Business Council, our office, the Attorney General's office, the State Auditor's office, has been working very hard during this session to get the program ready to start as soon as this legislation passes, assuming that it does pass, and has made great strides in doing so. So the group has selected a vendor to run the IT solution program to allow people to apply and to make automated decisions as quickly as possible on those applications. That will be linked with the state auditor system, again, so that payments are made to landlords immediately once a decision is made. The state auditor's office has started inputting into Wolf's landlords information directly, again, to make this as seamless as possible once the program gets up and running. DFS has been working with a network of nonprofit agencies and the counties to make determinations about which nonprofits and how much they should receive to get funding for administrative supports. So nonprofits will be assisting clients administratively with the application process itself, including by submitting it through our web-based portal, but also with collecting documentation, understanding questions, answering questions in a coherent way. And so nonprofits will be absolutely critical to the state in standing this program up. And it will be the county commissioners that make decisions about which nonprofits are really best suited for their communities to provide that support. Nonprofits will receive a second bucket of funding for housing support services, or housing stability services is how it's defined under the Act, which again is just additional direct service support to low-income families to help them stay in their homes and avoid evictions as much as possible. And so the state is motivated to get these dollars out as quickly as possible. And with that, I would stand for any questions that the committee has about the eviction program. I know that Erica Legursky is also available and online to answer questions about the CARES Act dollars.
So Emily, the $200 million for there's a timeline on that. Is that December 31st? And then the new dollars, what's the timeline on that?
So the timeline on the $200 million actually changed under the American Rescue Plan Act as well. Now the deadline for those dollars is September of 2022. However, as Director Obrecht indicated, September of this year is a deadline. It's unclear yet how the federal government is going to work this. So under the original law, in September of this year, if the state did not spend 65% of its funding, then the remaining funds could be reallocated to other states. The messaging that we appear to be getting from U.S. Treasury is that given that the deadline of the program as a whole has been extended to September of next year, they are unlikely to start reaching into our pockets in September of this year. But under the original law, they are still able to do so.
Questions from you? Go ahead, Representative Simpson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This bill, we talk about projects and programs and corporations. I see there is some discussion, particularly for the Department of Health. But Emily, could you give me an idea for the payments that are assisting our regular citizens, just a person that is out of work, are most of those programs pretty much wrapped up, or are we, give me a feel for how much money is going out to individual citizens in the state of Wyoming right now?
And Mr. Chairman, Representative, I believe that your question is specifically regarding the CARES Act portion of this bill, which I would defer questions on that to Erica Legursky. I believe she is on as well. I don't believe that there are currently programs. Well, I shouldn't answer that. I'm not sure about the answer to that question.
Good morning, Erica.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Erica Legursky, Policy Advisor for Governor Gordon. To answer that question, and I'm not quite sure if you're looking at individual business owners or individual people. As of right now, most of the business relief programs that we had are completed. So we do have, we had the interruption, the relief, the mitigation, the endurance. Those programs actually are done as of now. We did have some money that we have put into, the unemployment claims are still going. So there's individuals who are getting assistance that way. That would be more of a question for the unemployment group, but there is assistance going there. So for as individual assistance right now, most of those programs are had the deadline of 12/30.
So essentially those dollars terminated December 31st. And what this does is reopen those programs in order so we can continue to do it. So is that a fair statement, Erica?
That is, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, further questions for Erica or Emily? Okay, any other public comment? Okay, we'll close public comment. So what I'd like is to get that addition to this thing, and we'll try to then meet. What I'd like to do is kick this out as quick as we can. Yeah, let's just have a peek at this real quick.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, yeah, I handed out an amendment. First part of it on page 1, there's a typo in the engrossed bill that I saw last night. I probably wrote it to begin with. So we're getting that cleaned up. And then, Mr. Chairman, on page 5, this is the new $18 million, just in addition to that, asked for by the governor's office to clarify that when those programs were recreated under the 2020, that I think we wrote in that they would be under the original requirements of those programs as specified in the 2020 special legislation bills. Governor's office was concerned, well, those programs have expired. They had an expiration date of December 30th. They have reporting deadlines that backed up with that. The rules have expired as well. So this is clarification in this rule that, that they are only subject to the relevant provisions of the 2020 special session laws and in any rules or regulations adopted there too, and specifies that they won't expire until December 31st, 2021. that the agencies responsible for administering the programs may adopt rules, and that that will report the expenditure of these funds no later than 11/1/2021.
So I'm looking at section 4, lines 21 and 22. That appears to cover the ARP program as well. Is that right?
So section 4, Mr. Chairman, this, to the extent that there's ARP funds that are specifically for housing assistance, that would only be that limited amount.
Okay, go ahead. Anything else?
I think that's it. Just wanted to let you know that when I do I will give you a substitute bill and I'll incorporate this amendment in the substitute.
So the way Emily described it, there's another 171 million that's basically would come under this classification. Is that right?
I think she's got good information. That's news to me, but
Yeah,
you
it's
know,
new to me too.
it's a lot of money swirling around.
And we don't know if we can come up close to spending half of it.
I don't think so, but you know, Ms. Foley did mention the mortgage payments, maybe at least for a portion of this, which would be new. Now, the language as drafted gives DFS broad authority to implement the federal programs. And really, this is my understanding, and this is how it is. It's just federal take it or leave it money. We can't set the parameters on how to spend this money. The federal government does. If we agree to accept it, we agree to expend it pursuant to those federal requirements.
Representative Walters?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On the amendment there, Matt, in subsection C at the bottom of the page, report back by November 1st. If we have those FEMA dollars coming back or exchanged out and it's October before we see those, is that November deadline going to be problematic in terms of, I get we wanted it in November so we can figure out a way to go spend them before the end of the year and have 2 months instead of 2 days. But if we don't know what's coming back, should we adjust that date? Any thoughts you might have on that would be good.
Well, not only that, but maybe what we want are monthly reports.
Mr. Chairman, you could give, you know, whatever you wanted on that. That was just kind of me trying to give them some idea.
Yeah.
So, you know, certainly whatever the committee would choose on those.
Representative Schwartz?
So just for clarification, Matt, the reference to the mortgage relief, is that's ARP money, not the ERAP money? Because I know the ERAP, as I recall, there was an income requirement, 80% of, and if that doesn't apply to the mortgage relief, does it?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Schwartz, I really don't know. Yeah.
Well, and
Well,
not only that, we may not know yet.
Right.
Because the Treasury rules on that.
Right. It just seems that for mortgage holders, the likelihood of them meeting that income requirement is significantly less.
Yep, potentially. And on one of these handouts that the governor's office did for you, it's got a breakdown by county of the 80%. And whether that applies to the mortgage holders or not, we just don't know yet.
So what's the committee's preference on reporting? Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd move the proposed amendment that's in front of us. And then I would, if I receive a second on that, then I'd have an amendment for it.
Second.
Go ahead.
Thank you. In subsection C, I think rather we would delete the November 1st and put in monthly reports. And that's in a concept, Matt. So I don't know exactly which line you put the language into, but that would be my thought.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, that motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, maybe that should be monthly or as practically possible or something like that in case there's a little hiccup.
Well, my guess is they'll report when funds are expended. So, well, it'd be interesting to know if no funds are expended because, or, how much money's going out the door. That's what we were interested in. And it would be nice to know between now and when we have a special session, so that if we have to do something different, or we can tweak it, so. Okay. So, once again, Matt, the sooner we can get the language tacked in on 263, what I'd like to do is try to kick that out today before, if we can. Is that realistic?
Are you meeting this afternoon upon adjournment?
Yeah, we could meet upon adjournment and just kick it out so that it can be circulated, and because we got a busy week next week.
I think upon adjournment's doable.
Okay, appreciate it.
You bet.
Matt, we're adjourning at 10 this morning. Is that still doable?
Okay. So we'll hold back on any further action on 118 and go to 139. This is a pretty simple one. Who's got this? Have we signed this? Anybody yet to present it? Was it? Probably was.
We sent him off to another.
Any public comment on 139?
There's not. No comment, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, we'll close the public comment on 139. We have a motion on the bill.
Move the bill.
Moved by Representative Walters, seconded by Representative Kinner. Any further discussion? We all know what this is. All those okay, roll call, please.
This is on Senate File 139.
Yes.
I do pass. Representative Kinner.
Aye.
Representative Larson, I'll leave it open. Representative Schwartz. Representative Simpson.
Aye.
Representative Stith.
Aye.
Representative Walters.
Aye.
Chairman Nicholas.
Aye. So we don't have to wait for Lloyd. Let's just get it out so that it can get ran in as quick as we can. Oh, sure. Yeah. Okay, that's all we've got.